In Minnesota, tensions have reached a boiling point following the fatal shooting of Alex Pretti by federal immigration officers. This incident, coming just weeks after the death of Renee Good under similar circumstances, has reignited public protests and drawn national attention. The community is demanding answers and accountability, with local officials and residents expressing outrage over the repeated use of deadly force. The situation has become a flashpoint in the ongoing debate over federal immigration enforcement and its impact on local communities. As the story unfolds, the eyes of the nation remain fixed on Minnesota, waiting to see how leaders will respond to the growing unrest. President Donald Trump addressed the crisis in Minnesota during a Fox News interview, stating that his administration would de-escalate a little bit in the state. He described the shootings as terrible and acknowledged the pain felt by the community. Trump emphasized that his administration had removed thousands of criminals from Minnesota, suggesting that these actions had improved public safety. However, he also signaled a shift in approach, indicating that federal operations in the state would be scaled back in response to the recent tragedies and mounting criticism. The details surrounding Alex Pretty's death remain hotly contested. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem claimed Pretti was brandishing a gun and accused him of domestic terrorism. However, eyewitnesses and local officials dispute this, saying Pretti was holding a phone, not a weapon, when he was shot. A preliminary Customs and Border Protection report also appears to contradict the initial federal account, noting that agents fired but not mentioning that Pretti reached for a firearm. These conflicting narratives have fueled public skepticism and intensified calls for transparency. In response to the escalating crisis, the Department of Homeland Security removed Gregory Bovino, the leader of the Minnesota mission, and replaced him with Tom Homan, the White House's so-called border czar. Homan quickly met with state and city officials, including Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, to discuss the situation. This leadership shakeup signals the administration's intent to address the unrest and restore order, while also attempting to rebuild trust with local authorities and the public. The deaths of Good have sparked widespread protests and calls for the withdrawal of federal immigration agents from Minnesota. Local residents, activists, and officials are demanding a thorough investigation and greater accountability from federal authorities. The community's anger is palpable, with many questioning the necessity and conduct of the federal presence in their state. As demonstrations continue, the pressure mounts on both local and national leaders to deliver justice and prevent further violence. Amid growing scrutiny, some Republican leaders, including Vermont Governor Phil Scott and Senator Pete Ricketts, have called for a transparent federal investigation into Pretty's death. A federal judge has already blocked the Department of Homeland Security from destroying or altering any evidence related to the case. These steps aim to ensure that the investigation is thorough and impartial, reflecting the seriousness with which lawmakers and the public are treating the incident. Shootings have reignited the national debate over immigration enforcement and the role of federal agents in local communities. Trump defended his administration's crackdown, citing polls showing broad support for deporting criminal immigrants. However, critics argue that aggressive tactics have led to unnecessary violence and eroded trust between law enforcement and the public. The controversy highlights deep divisions in American society over how best to balance security and civil rights. Media coverage of the Minnesota shootings has been extensive, with national outlets highlighting the conflicting accounts and the administration's response. Social media has amplified public outrage, with many users demanding justice and sharing personal stories of encounters with law enforcement. The intense scrutiny has put additional pressure on officials to act swiftly and transparently, as the nation watches closely for any developments in the case. As the situation in Minnesota continues to evolve, President Trump's promise to de-escalate federal operations marks a significant turning point. The coming weeks will be critical as investigations proceed and officials work to restore calm. The outcome of this crisis may shape future policies on federal intervention and community relations, serving as a pivotal moment in the ongoing national conversation about justice, security, and the role of government.